Dynasty waiver wire time. You guys know what it is. This is the deep Dynasty waiver wire for you degens out there. It is the fantasy championship. So this is a combination, like it has been for the last few weeks, of guys that could potentially help you this week win your championship versus, guys to potentially stash for next year. This is the last one we're going to be making until the new year and last Dynasty waiver wire show. And after that, we're going to be putting in a deep Dynasty stash video, that you should be targeting, guys you should be targeting before your waiver wire closes, which I know for some of you it does. Real quick, before we get into it, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. If you like Dynasty content, this is the place to be. Please subscribe if you can. This is from one of our last Dynasty videos. We do pretty well, Dynasty waiver wire. We do pretty well here. 80% of you are not subscribed. If just half of you that are watching this that are not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. You can help us get to 900 subscribers pretty easily. But let's jump into it here. Starting off with the quarterback position. Only one quarterback here who has his head, top of his head there cut off. Jordan Travis. He's keep trade cut QB 43. If you guys remember Jordan Travis, he played at FSU, broke his leg or tore his ACL, I forget. He tore his ACL, I believe, at the end of last year. Was drafted by the Jets in the 5th round. Some people think he's just a career backup. He doesn't quite have the arm talent to be the guy, but it sounds like the Jets are going to move on from Aaron Rodgers. They're currently 8th in the draft order, I believe. If they win another game, they're going to, go even higher. But even if they don't, they could be picking 8th or 9th this year. And honestly, this year, it's not that deep of a draft class. There's maybe 2 guys that are going to be taken in the top 5. And beyond that, like it gets shallow pretty quickly. So what are the Jets going to do without Rodgers? They don't have the worst record. They could win one more of their games, before the end of the year. So does Jordan Travis potentially get a shot next year? Maybe. The one thing I will say that kind of leads you to not believe that is that, it is a little bit deeper in the free agent pool for the waiver wire. So into some running backs here. Blake Watson. We finally got to see Blake Watson in some action last week. A guy that I really, really like. A running back on the Denver. If you didn't know, he had 4 carries and a catch against the Chargers back on the 19th, about 5 days ago. But a guy that I really, really liked coming out as an undrafted guy. Like his skill set, he can catch the ball. He reminds me a little bit of potentially like a Darren Sproles type of player for Sean Payton. Obviously, you're not going to get much for this year, but next year, this could be pretty good. I just think Denver has not run the ball well this year. I think they're for sure moving on from Javonte Williams, but also Jaleel McLaughlin. This running attack just hasn't been very good. And so do they try and fix that with some more of Sean Payton's guys? Maybe they will. And maybe Blake Watson is a part of that. Michael Carter, this is more for this week. If you need someone this week, Michael Carter could be a pretty good play if both James Conner and Trey Benson are out. Michael Carter was kind of the next up in line. Also, DJ Dallas, if Michael Carter is rostered, DJ Dallas is potentially out there that you can grab. But Michael Carter had 5 carries and 5 catches, and he played about 36% of the snaps. That will obviously go up if both those guys are out. So he could be a decent play this week, especially for your deeper dynasty, just like Kenny McIntosh. Spelt like McIntosh, I think pronounced like McIntosh. Both Charbonnet and Ken Walker could miss time here, and Kenny McIntosh is the next up in line. 7th round pick from a couple of years ago. I think he can catch the ball. He plays a lot on special teams and things like that, but we could see Kenny McIntosh play a little bit more, and he has been playing a little bit more with those guys already out, about 20% of the snaps over the last few weeks. But Kenny McIntosh could be a desperation play if you need it for this week. Craig Reynolds, I know he didn't really do much on the ground, but Craig Reynolds did play a lot. He did play a lot. He only had 4 carries and a catch, but he played like 50% of the snaps. I don't think maybe people don't realize that. A lot of that could have come in the, oh no, sorry, 15%. 15%. I thought he played more. It was 50% of the special team snaps. He played 15% of the snaps. It was kind of all Jahmyr Gibbs, which I thought they would at least incorporate Kenny McIntyre, or sorry, Craig Reynolds a little bit more, but they didn't. Sione Vaki is also on the team. He had 2 catches, and he played 8% of the snaps. So both those guys, I guess how I look at it is like the Lions know they need Jahmyr Gibbs for the playoffs. You know, they play the 49ers. If they kind of have that game in hand, then you could see a little bit bigger game for Craig Reynolds. Obviously, the Lions need to keep winning now to keep that number 1 spot. Chris Brooks. Chris Brooks is an intriguing one because he is like, you know, and I think people have finally realized that in the Dynasty community, he is the backup to Josh Jacobs. He's the one that plays more. He plays more than Emmanuel Wilson. He plays about 30%, 25 to 30% of the snaps, and he's been doing that since about week 8, Chris Brooks. You know, he gets a handful of carries. He gets a catch or 2 a game. He got the touchdown last week, or, you know, yesterday's game. And Chris Brooks, you know, the Packers are in an interesting spot where I don't think they can really change their seeding for their playoff spot all too much, because could they still beat out Minnesota potentially? Not for the division, obviously, but if they tie in the wild card spot, maybe there's a chance they do. I don't know the whole tiebreaker scenarios, but it looks unlikely that the Packers are going to move really from that 6th seed, the second wild card team. So, do they kind of rest Josh Jacobs a little bit more, or maybe you get a little bit more of Chris Brooks in this last week here? Cody Schrader, this is for 2025. I keep bringing him up, but he's a guy, he's on the Rams active roster. He has been all year. Rams are one of those teams. I want kind of all the running backs on the active roster because we don't know what can happen to these guys. And Cody Schrader, they like him enough to keep him on the active roster all year. So I don't mind holding on to Cody Schrader for next year. Pierre Strong, if you're looking for more of a desperation play here, because of the Nick Chubb injury, Pierre Strong played a little bit more. He played in 20% of the snaps. You know, he's going to be good for a couple carries and a couple catches. Obviously, Jerome Ford is there. Dante Foreman is also still there. So don't forget about Dante Foreman, who played only 3% of the snaps there. So this is, again, more of a desperation play, but it's a guy that you know is going to at least get some touches in Pierre Strong. And Ty Johnson, if you haven't picked him up, I'm sure a lot of people picked him up over the last couple of weeks because he's been playing a lot better. But, you know, a guy that they're kind of using more as a receiver than anything. And he did get 6 carries. So Ty Johnson could be a desperation play in PPR leagues. Into some more receivers that I really think can help you. Devontae Walker, if he's not rostered, you might want to roster him. He could be, this is more for 2025, not this year necessarily, although he is playing a little bit more. He caught a touchdown a couple weeks ago, but Devontae Walker, 4th round pick this year. I think he potentially replaces like a Rashad Bateman or Nelson Aguilar next year. Ravens don't really invest much in receivers. You know, they have Zay Flowers, still have Nelson Aguilar and Rashad Bateman, guys they've had for a long time, but Devontae Walker or Tez Walker could overtake one of those guys' spots and could be like the wide receiver 2 or 3 next year for the Baltimore Ravens. Olamide Zaccheaus, and he's the perfect example of why I tell you guys, like, hey, if you're in a desperate spot, find a guy that's out there playing. Whether he's producing or not, I don't know, but find a guy that's playing. Zaccheaus is one of those guys. He's a perfect example of that. He's a guy that consistently plays 40 to 50% of the snaps. This last week, he played 70% of the snaps. And he happened to catch 2 touchdowns. Guys that play that much, they're going to have games every now and then. So especially if you play in best ball. So Zaccheaus is out there. He's played about 55% about 60% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks. He has 12 targets, 8 catches, over 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns combined over the last 2 weeks. That is some productive stuff. Just like David Moore. David Moore is another one of those guys, especially with Xavier Legette out. David Moore plays. He plays a lot, and he gets targets. He had a touchdown catch this last week. He has, let's see here, 4. He has 5 or more targets in 1, 2, 3, 4 of their last 7 games. He has 40 or more yards in 1, 2, 3, 4 of their last 7 games. He's caught a touchdown in 2 of the last 7 games. So just a guy who's playing a lot, running a lot of routes. And because of that, he's going to get targeted. He played 90% of the snaps, and that was without Xavier Legette. So expect that again. Isaiah Williams, this is for 2025. He's on the Bengals. I know he's in the Lions uniform there, but he is on the Bengals. He's a guy that is intriguing. He has intriguing tape. He's an undrafted rookie, tough guy. If there's anyone that's ever going to replace the Tyler Boyd role, it could be Isaiah Williams. It could be. So just someone to kind of keep an eye on there for the foreseeable future there in 2025. Nico Remigio. If you play in any type of return yardage leagues, Nico Remigio, who was called up just a few weeks ago, is the new punt and kick returner for the Chiefs ever since Mecole Hardman got hurt. Basically, in 3 games, Remigio has 250 all-purpose yards in just 3 games. So if you, again, like that's really good production, guys. If you get equal, if one return yard is the same as one rush yard, you're averaging about 83 return yards per game for Remigio here. He had a big game this last week against Houston, over 100, almost 130 return yards. So, and who knows, maybe he gets on the field a little bit, in 2025 or something. They obviously like the guy. So Nico Remigio, keep an eye on him, is getting some playing time. Casey Washington is for 2025. He is on the Atlanta Falcons, another guy whose tape I like coming out of Illinois. Didn't really get his opportunity this year. Obviously, he played behind, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, even Rondale Moore when he was there, Ray McLeod. So we didn't really see much from Casey Washington, but, maybe he wins the wide receiver 3 job for the Falcons next year. Who knows? Maybe a guy to stash. Anaya Smith, another guy that you're going to be seeing on the stash list. Just a guy that I really like his skill set and how it complements guys like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So he's kind of a wide receiver, running back type of hybrid there. So, I think he's an interesting one to potentially stash for 2025. Tylan Wallace is more for this week if you need him. Big play receiver that's getting on the field just a little bit more, especially if Nelson Aguilar misses time. Tylan Wallace, the last 3 weeks has been playing about 40% of the snaps. And we know he can have a big game like he did back in week 10, 3 for 115 and a touchdown. Robert Woods might be an interesting player now that Tank Dell is hurt. I know they brought in Deontay Johnson. I don't expect much from Deontay Johnson week 1. Robert Woods now played 60% of the snaps, which was his highest since week 4. 60% of the snaps, had 6 targets. Robert Woods could have a decent game this week if he's out there playing and he gets 6 or 7 targets. You hope one of those is a touchdown, and he could have a decent game for sure. Jaheim Bell, into some tight ends here. Jaheim Bell for 2025, a very nice hybrid type of tight end, versatile player. Not really a true tight end, more of a just a bigger wide receiver. He's 6'2", 240. Pretty good receiving guy, though. In college, he even had a season where he rushed the ball over 70 times. So it just kind of shows you his versatility. Had decent numbers in college, 40 catches, 500 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Does he potentially take over as the tight end 2 for the Patriots next year? Assuming Austin Hooper is gone. Julian Hill, another guy who's literally been on this waiver wire show like each and every week. He is the tight end 2 for the Dolphins. He plays a lot, by the way. He plays a lot. He consistently plays 40 to 50% of the snaps each and every week. He doesn't do much stats wise. Like maybe he'll give you a catch and get a target. But I just think about like what Jonnu Smith's doing with this offense. Julian Hill was a project. He's 6'4", 250. Tight end. He was a good pass catching tight end in college, but he went to Campbell. Which is a lower level school. So he was a project. Overall, he was a project, trying to pull up his stats at Campbell. Yeah, he had his last year in 2022. He had 38 catches, 650 yards, and 5 touchdowns for Campbell. So, um, those are good numbers. Those are good numbers. And if he were to just take over this role as the tight end one for the Dolphins, I don't think Jonnu Smith's going to go anywhere because they signed him to a 2-year contract. But what if he gets hurt or something? Or what if they do move on from Jonnu and Julian Hill, takes over and we see what Jonnu's doing this year? So someone I'd like to stash for 2025, Luke Farrell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, Evan Ingram got hurt. Brendan Strange seemed to have gotten benched. Because he fumbled, I think, in the end of the half, and he didn't play a fourth quarter snap, Brenton Strange. So I don't know what's going on there. Luke Farrell played his season high in snaps at 48%. He had 3 targets and 2 catches, and if he gets the full game and they actually do bench Brenton Strange, well, everyone that wanted to start Brenton Strange, maybe you kind of get 60% of the production from Luke Farrell. And then Payne Durham, if Cade Otton is going to miss some time and he got beat up in this last week's game, Payne Durham is the next tight end up in line. And Payne Durham, a 5th-round pick from a couple years ago, he had 7 targets this last week, Payne Durham did. Obviously, Cade Otton missed a lot of time there. Payne Durham played 93% of the snaps. But even before that, Durham was playing about 40% of the snaps. So it's not like he wasn't getting on the field. He was just being used more as a blocker. But now with Cade Otton being out, he had 7 targets, 5 catches. So if Cade Otton's going to miss some time, then Payne Durham could be a starting tight end this week. That's all I have for you guys. The last Dynasty Waiver Wire show before we start getting into stashes. Again, please, if you have not subscribed, help us get to 900 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you all very, very much. Good luck in your fantasy championships. And I'll see you all very, very soon.